Hey guys, so today we're going to learn how to annotate a heart diagram and how to measure a pulse rate as well as how exercising affects it. So this is the diagram of a heart, and these are the parts of the heart that you need to know. And you might notice that the labels are color-coded differently. And this is to show whether they carry deoxygenated blood or oxygenated blood, which is shown in here. So blue means that it carries deoxygenated blood and red means that it carries oxygenated blood. And you might wonder, oh, I thought arteries only carry oxygenated blood. And yes, you're right, but no at the same time, because the deoxygenated blood in the body needs to get to the heart in order to be oxygenated. And how does it enter the heart? It enters through the inferior vena cava. Pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood, and which is the same as pulmonary vein. It's the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. So I'll explain this diagram in terms of blood flow. First, let's talk about deoxygenated blood. How does it flow through the heart? And then it gets into the right atrium. And this is when the right atrium contracts and pushes the blood through the tricuspid valve, which causes the blood to enter the right ventricle. And once it enters the right ventricle, it contracts again, and then it pushes blood through the pulmonary valve, which is here. And an interesting thing about these valves is that once the blood enters the pulmonary valve, then the tricuspid valve shuts down to prevent backflow of the blood so that it won't try to flow into the right atrium. And once the pulmonary valve is closed, the tricuspid valve opens, which is what we learned in the last video when we were talking about veins and valves. So anyways, when the blood has flowed through the pulmonary valve, it enters the pulmonary artery. And this is when the blood leaves the heart and flows towards the lungs. And that's where the red blood cells in the blood receives oxygen and drops off carbon dioxide and gets oxygenated. And since it's oxygenated, it needs to return to the heart in order to be pumped throughout the rest of the body. So the oxygenated blood will flow from the lungs to the pulmonary vein. Then it enters the left atrium. Then it contracts and the blood gets pushed through the mitral valve, which is also known as bicuspid valve. And then it enters the left ventricle, and when there's enough pressure, the left ventricle contracts and it pumps blood through the aortic valve, which is here. And the aorta, which is the largest artery, carries the oxygenated blood throughout the body. And you might be wondering what this is, because I haven't talked about this yet. But a septum basically refers to a partition that separates two chambers. So in this case, the septum is separating the right side of the heart to the left side of the heart. Now, let's look at how do you measure your pulse rate. First, you have to find your pulse at the neck, which is next to the trachea. And then, once you found it, you have to count how many beats there are in 15 seconds. Then you multiply this number by 4 to find out how much BPM your heart beats. And BPM, as you guys all know, refers to beats per minute. And that's why you times the 15 seconds by 4 in order to find out how many beats your heart beats in 60 seconds, which is a minute. That was a little bit of an over-explanation, but I'm just telling you guys just in case. So, how does exercise affect your pulse rate? So basically, you have to know that muscles can easily get tired. Therefore, and that it needs oxygen to break down the sugar and create energy. And when I mentioned oxygen, sugar, and energy, you might have noticed that these appear in the equation for respiration. And yes, you're right. So in order to create more energy, your muscle cells need to carry out more respiration. As a result, your heart needs to work harder and pump oxygenated blood faster, which means that your pulse rate will increase because your heart is beating more in a given amount of time. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I have created a Quizlet for this topic, which is going to be in the description of this video. So make sure to check that out.